Indeed, I'd argue that 2nd Isaiah is driven in this logic further than most monotheisms are willing to go. The writer has Yahweh declare at 45:8 that Yotzer or uvrei choshech oso shalom uvrei ra, ani Yahweh ose kol eila. I form the light and the darkness. I create the good and the evil. I, Yahweh, do all these things. I suspect that few monotheisms have risen to this height, making God responsible for both good and for evil. And indeed, most so-called monotheisms recoil in theological horror that God has even the capacity to create evil, thus making evil the result of some other demigod like the devil or Satan or Iblis or whatever, human failure, some kind of great fall in the Garden of Eden, or philosophical negation incapable of being created as such, the idea of Augustine that evil is simply negation. Even later rabbinical Judaism, the direct inheritors of this theological tradition, were so uncomfortable with this verse that they altered it before putting it into the prayer book. Yotzer or uvrei choshech ose shalom uvrei hakol, forming light and dark, making peace, and everything, rather than just saying it. Evil, Ra. In this sense, Isaiah 45:8 may well be the pinnacle of pure monotheism, a monotheism so pure that it terrified future theologians, having to betray it for philosophical negation or eschatological bitheism, with an inverse god of evil ultimately destroyed at the end of the world as a means of monotheistic saving face. Regardless, the Persian Cyrus would prove to be the first and only effective Moshiach, or Messiah, in Judean history. The Judeans were allowed to repatriate their homeland, masses of temple artifacts were returned, and some section of the population did opt to return to Judea to rebuild things there. Many did not, however, preferring an apparently comfortable life in the Persian Empire. I mean, those cuneiform documents show a flourishing world there. Perhaps it was the remnants of the older priestly conservative class desiring to inaugurate the Deuteronomistic temple theology that returned, or perhaps even syncretists that wanted to go back to the old ways. One could imagine the nascent monotheists, if they existed at this point, frankly being content to worship Yahweh anywhere, a central temple being more of an accessory to religious piety than a necessity. Indeed, non-Jerusalem Yahweh shrines would continue to exist well into the Hellenistic period. However, intermarriage and likely theological syncretism seems to have persisted through this period, and it's not even clear that the population has a sense of how to be religiously Judean, whatever that meant. In fact, I think that they are inventing Judaism during this period, with readings of the Law of Moses seeming a rather novel innovation at the time, rather than some time-honored tradition among the population. I suspect that most things we think of as Judaism were pioneered during this period and not to be found in the Israelite period. And while there does seem to be a return to the Deuteronomistic theology and the priestly sacrificial cycle by the theological conservatives, though like all conservatives, I'm sure they were just innovating the entire time, all the while pretending this is the way that it's always been done, another more radical theology was also emerging at this time. Perhaps born out of the theological negation that flickered into existence as exilic Judean monotheism, perhaps under the influence of the Zoroastrian religion, and then a whole new heap of social turmoil, a new mode of Judean religion was appearing at the same time. It was a religious mode marked by an interest in cosmogony, events in the primordial past, what is called ex eventu prophecy, couched in highly symbolic and polysemic language, a deep expressed anxiety about oppression and tribulation, eschatological upheavals, the judgment and eventual fate of the righteous and the wicked, and maybe some other world, journeys to those other worlds, a sense of dualism between good and evil, the intervention into history by a kind of Messiah savior figure, and then anti-Messiah characters, the structures of the heavens and the hells that they had developed, the hidden role of angels and demons in worldly affairs, a profusion of angels and demons not found in Israelite religion, in a generally divinely deterministic outlook. Things might be bad, but God's in control, all of which were pseudo-anonymous and alleged ancient authorship, and most importantly, what gives this genre, this mode of religiosity its name. The revealing, the apocalypsis, from the Greek meaning to reveal or to uncover. All of this to a human agent, often through an angelic emissary. Jewish apocalypticism was beginning to roar into existence within the crucible of monotheism, out of which the theological particularism of Yahweh himself would be negated as so much dross, leaving behind the universal God the world has inherited, for better and for worse. The next episode, in what has apparently become a series on Yahweh, not sure how that happened, is going to explore Yahweh as Yahweh is transformed in that period of apocalyptic transformation, the Yahweh of the apocalypse. For more on this subject, if you're interested in Yahweh and the history and development of monotheism, I'd really recommend you check out my reading list, and those are basically my sources for this episode over in the description for this video. So if you want to get into this literature from a academic and non-dogmatic point of view, I'll point you in the direction of some fantastic texts. And I hope you, again, as much as you might be outraged or curious, I hope you would dump that energy not into arguing with me on the internet, because you're not arguing with me, you're just arguing with all the scholars that I read and report back on. I hope you engage with those scholars. I'm just some guy. I'm just reporting to you their scholarship and a little bit of my own ideas. Go check out their scholarship and argue with them. Send them angry emails, not me. But until next time, I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and thank you for watching Esoterica, where we explore the arcane in history, philosophy, and religion.